I think this is working. Not totally sure. Yep. All right. It's working. Working good enough. All right. So, yesterday I made a video about the InBody and decided I wanted to redo it because I didn't have this visual. Right? I didn't have this visual. So, right here, I created the visual so you guys can see it. So, let's go over this. We're doing InBody tests during this month of May. Right, the goal as a gym is to lose 1,000 pounds of fat and 300 pounds of muscle, and gain 300 pounds of muscle in 2025. All right, that is the goal. So we're doing InBodies more and more consistently, and we might even up that a little bit after some things that I've learned. So we have InBody machines at both gyms. It's embarrassing for me. It's my fault that some members don't know that we have these machines that do body composition analysis, but we do have them at both gyms available for our members to use whenever you guys want. Right, this is part, you don't pay extra for it. If you're a member at the gym, use it anytime you want. If you're a non-member and you're listening to this, you're like, damn, I'd like to use that. It's $50 to you, so you're paying $50 to use it. All right, and you're gonna make an appointment, so there's that. But if you're a member, you can use it anytime you want. And I implore you to do so, not daily, but we'll talk about it, but every couple weeks. So I'm going to get right into it. I want to explain this test sheet in a little bit more detail, kind of how I go over it with clients, so you guys have a reference to go back to, and you kind of understand this. But then I want to get into a little more detail on the InBody machine itself. I want to get into a little bit more testing protocols, and then how to interpret these tests as far as a trend versus just, what do you want to say? You want to look at trends, not just single snapshots. All right? That's what I'm getting at. So, here we go. This is an InBody test. All right? No clue who it is. Kind of have an idea, but just want to go over this. So intracellular water right here at the top. This is water inside your cells. So we're going to back up real quick. InBody does its testing through a biomedical impedance. It's sending electrical pulses through your body, and based on the resistance that it's getting back from sending those pulses is how it's picking up water, fat, and muscle. So that's how it's picking that up. And dry lean mass. Okay, so different tissues have different resistances, and based on the impedance, which is down here in this little chart, it is going to give you a pretty accurate estimation of body fat, muscle mass, dry lean mass, intra and extracellular water. All right, so that's how the InBody machine works. Hospitals all over the country use this machine, use this technology, so it's pretty accurate. All right, and we'll get into some comparisons here shortly. So, at the top, intracellular water. All right, this is water inside the cells. It's giving us 79 pounds. Right, extracellular water, water outside the cells, 47 pounds, 126 pounds of water. All right, dry lean mass. This is going to be bones mostly, and something else, but yeah, 47 pounds. We can get into it later. So that between these three, 173 pounds, and then you have body fat mass, 19 pounds of fat on this human brings it to 193 pounds. All right, so that is how this composition is broken down. Then we get it over here to muscle fat analysis. So total body weight. Then we have skeletal muscle. This is in pounds. All right, skeletal muscle mass in pounds, 99.4 pounds. All right, body fat mass, again, repeated here, but it's 19.6 pounds. So this little arrow right here, this would be under average, if you will, or under optimal. This would be optimal range, okay? This would be above optimal, depending on how you look at it, right? So this is saying I'm in the, You guys figured it out. This is my InBody scan. Haha, shocking. So this is saying that I'm in the 200 and close to 80th percentile, I guess, for muscle mass. I don't really care. It's saying I'm below the 100th percentile. And this is based on InBody aggregate data for body fat, and it's saying I'm over the 100th percentile for weight for my size and height. So whatever that means, nothing for us really. I like seeing muscle mass over here, and I like seeing body fat over here for everybody. Body mass index, okay, this is a garbage test. It's based on height and weight, and this is saying that I am leaning towards the obese side. So this is garbage. So at 10% body fat, I am leaning towards the obese side. That's messed up. I think this is a garbage metric. It's only used for epidemiological data collection. It's fast because it's based on height and weight only. And unfortunately, still some entities out there use this as a health metric. And I get it. Most of the country isn't very healthy. So take it for what it is. But in our gym, our life, I do not put any weight into this, no pun intended, metric. Okay, so BMI, garbage. Body fat percent, this is not garbage. Okay, so we want to make sure our body fat is maintained at a healthy range for our health. All right, so the goal for men is going to be, in the ideal world, between this 10 and 20%. All right, living in here, if you're below 20%, you're in the healthy range. Okay, 15 to 10% is optimal range, right? 15 to 20% is health range. Above 20%, we're having conversations, right? If you're above 20%, we need to start working our way towards that 20% for health as a man, right? This is segmented lean mass. So this is muscle distribution, left to right arm, left to right leg, and trunk, all right? You can see based on percentile, I'm a little bit top heavy, right? And got some slight asymmetries, but nothing crazy. 10.8, 10.4, my left arm. Funny enough, I broke my left arm in 4 places when I was in junior high school. This could be left over from that. Who knows? I don't know. There's always probably going to be some asymmetries, right? Left to right leg, pretty balanced here. A little different, but not much. But if you have had a past injury, this can be telling. I have had folks tell me, no current injuries, anything like that, fair. But then we do an InBody scan and their left leg is, a pound smaller than their right leg. Like, oh, I tore my ACL in high school. All right, well, we have a pretty significant asymmetry. Sometimes correcting those asymmetries can relieve pain, back pain, hip pain. It can. So it's just something to be mindful of, right? Then we come down here, we have extracellular water versus total body water analysis. This is a signal or metric for inflammation, for if you are overhydrated, if you have a lot of extracellular water floating around in your body. We want to live between 0.36 and 0.39. If you're living between here, you're in a good spot, right? You're in a good spot. So I wouldn't put as long as you're living between here, in a good spot. If you are above 0.39, 2 things there. If you're way above it, we're going to want to seek some medical attention. Something could be going on, right? Could be diabetes, could be some sort of edema, something going on, unless you just really, really overhydrated, which can cause a heart issue. So don't really, really overhydrate. That could be a problem. All right, so living between here, we're fine. You can see all my recent tests, I'm living in about the exact same spot. All right, that 0.37, kind of leaning in the middle. Might suggest I could hydrate a little more. I don't know. But you can see since 2024, I've kind of lived there. So that's what that is. Again, if you're living in this range, not terribly concerned about it. If you're over 0.39, that's a problem. If you're under 0.36, potentially a sign of pretty heavy dehydration, like heavy, like maybe 2 days without water. I don't know what would send that sideways on the dehydration side, how extreme it has to be. But if it comes in down there, we need to take a look at it. All right. Down here, you got your history. It's your most previous 8 tests. So if you do this at either gym, this goes to the almighty cloud, and it will show on here as long as you use the same member ID, or we use our phone numbers. So as long as you use that same one, it'll go to the cloud, and your data from this machine, because they're the same machine at both gyms, will sync up on here. If you use a different machine at a different place, I don't think it'll sync up on your data sheet, but it will sync up to your InBody app. Okay, because I have an InBody machine at home, home use one, and that does sync to my app, but it does not sync to this. All right, so the InBody app's pretty cool. I suggest downloading it, and you just use your ID, and it keeps a much longer track history of your progress. All right, so yeah, it's just tracking your metrics over time. So when it comes to your body composition testing, one of the biggest things you want to look at is trends. What is our trend? So right here, you can see my muscle pretty much stays the same, trending sideways, and since 2024, I've had a pretty nice trend down in body fat. Okay, that's what if you're trying to lose weight, you want to look at trends, not individual tests, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but trends are important. So if you're trying to lose body fat over time, depending on the intervals that you're testing at, you want to pay attention to trends, because this machine does have a 2% potential margin for error, and we'll get into that in a second. And same with muscle, trends, all right? And this is one reason it's important to do composition, because as you can see, body fat or total weight has changed. I would be very sad if I lost a lot of muscle, but I'm not sad because it's been fat, not muscle. So this is one of the biggest reasons composition is far superior to just checking your weight, all right? I have zero use for checking my body weight. My body weight is irrelevant to anything I'm doing. I understand certain sports and things like that. Knowing your body weight is important, but for most of us, healthy living, weight is pretty irrelevant, and we want to know composition. So that is one of the biggest reasons we have these machines at both gyms for our members to use. So if we come up here, this part is going to show us InBody suggestions. So this is their suggestions to hit optimal health, right? So this says I don't need to make any changes for optimal health. Okay. InBody fat mass, 0. Lean body mass, 0. I don't need to make any changes one way or the other for health. Some of you might have this printout. We have them come through more often than not that we need to lose fat, and from time to time I see signals to gain muscle. Fortunately, those of you that have been working out with us for a while, you probably don't see the prompt to gain lean muscle, because, well, our members are strong, and muscle is king, muscle is health. Muscle is health, right? But if it says gain lean mass, well, we're going to get after it. All right, segmented fat mass. This is a breakdown of where your fat is in your body. So you can see I have very little fat left in my arms, right? Most of my fat is in my trunk. For me, it's visceral fat is where I tend to store fat, which is unfortunate for my long-term health, but it is something I need to be mindful of and keep tabs on, right? Because if you pull up some of my past InBody scans, my visceral fat score was like 6, 7 at times. I've worked my, guts off to get it down to a healthy, optimal level, right? And then you can see my legs got a little bit of fat in. We got 2.6 pounds in each leg, right? So this is where you're storing your fat. So I got that D-shaped curve here, but I also have that D-shaped curve here, which is, it's a sign of an athlete, if you will. You have more muscle mass that pushes this out, creates that curve. It's somewhat irrelevant to most of us. Most people in the gym are going to have that. Visceral fat score, this is on a scale of 1 to 20. So this is giving you a score for how much fat you have around your organs. Under 10 is healthy. So if you're under 10, you don't need to be too concerned. Under 5 is optimal. Okay, under 5 is optimal. You don't want this to go to 0. Your body needs fat. Your organs need fat to protect them. You do not want this to go to 0. Right? 0 is bad. If you're naturally at a 1, well, I hate you because you got them good genetics. Okay, so that doesn't mean that you're just metabolically void of any potential problems. Right? I've seen very skinny people have very poor labs. Right? So you still need to get your blood work. You still need to eat your labs, get your annual physicals. Those things are important. But if you start getting to a visceral fat level of 10 or above, we're having conversations, right? If I see this thing at 10, we're having serious talk, right? Just like if we're seeing body fat percentage at 20, we're having serious talk. It's time to figure things out and reverse the direction of these things. Okay, we got to reverse the direction, all right? But if you're at 10 or below, remember, 10 is a cutoff. It's a cutoff. We want to get that down. So that is just, it is what it is. All right. Yeah. So here, a little bit of results interpretations, if you will. You can scan this QR code and it'll go into an InBody video, which will go over what I just went over. All right. So for your viewing pleasure, I have a second InBody scan. Now, I honestly have no clue who this is. Let's pull that over. Boom. Here we go. All right, got the second InBody scan here. So, this person, going through all the stuff, we have a little something different. So, muscle mass is right at the 100th percentile for this person. Okay, body fat mass is a little steep. It's a little over the 100th percentile. It's breaking into this barrier over here, which we don't want to see. We want to see muscle breaking over here. We want to see body fat more over here. All right, now this person needs to, here's the reason I use this scan, I found it, is because this is the perfect example of where BMI is bullshit. Pardon my French. But this person has an okay BMI, but allegedly, based on BMI, they're better off than I am. Not cool. Not cool. Because InBody's telling them to lose 13 pounds of fat. InBody's telling me I don't need to lose any fat. Right? Now, because they're over the 100th percentile for muscle mass, it's not suggesting that people need to gain lean muscle mass. If this was 98th percentile, it would prompt a suggestion to gain lean muscle mass, right? So they're still okay on the lean mass, but body fat a little steep. So we're at 30.5% body fat. Okay, now based on the ranges here, this was a female InBody test. So men was 10 to 20%, women is 18 to 28%. Once you get over 28% body fat, we want to start taking things a little more serious, you know, taking what we're eating and so forth and start cleaning things up a little bit. All right, so for women, health 23 to 28%. And then optimal is going to be 18 to 23%. Prior to me doing this little bit of research to go over this video for you guys, I wouldn't train a female below 20% body fat or coach them to lose weight and get below 20%. Now I'll take that number down to 18%. All right, I'll bargain with folks there. We can go down to 8%. Just like men, the cutoff for me has always been 10%. I'm not coaching you nutritionally to lose weight if you're at 10 or less percent. Like, I'm just not doing it. You come into health issues if you start getting your body fat too low. So in my mind, if you are below 18% and you're living a healthy lifestyle and your muscle mass is good, I'm not going to beat you up too much about it. But if you are trying to still cut calories and do things to lose more fat and you're below 18% for female or 10% for male, we're going to have a little chat, because that is also unhealthy, but Fortunately, unfortunately, in society, it's not that big of a concern across the board. So just some baseline metrics to keep tabs on there. And again, skeletal muscle mass, history, hydration. Like I said, you never really see huge deviations here. All right. So what's interesting is this one was lower on the hydration and then higher on the fat. As hydration improved, fat went down. I'm going to get into why that's interesting here in a second. Then you come over here. Oh, I forgot to go over this. Basal metabolic rate. This is total calories required to sustain current composition at rest. Right? So if this person's just sitting on the couch all day, not moving, just breathing, you need 1,341 calories to sustain current composition. So what this is good for is we can take this plus our non-exercise expenditure activity, NEAT, and we can figure out a starting place for caloric needs when figuring out your macros. All right, so I do use this number when I'm figuring out somebody's macros as a starting place for figuring out their macros. So it is an important number for a starting place. It gives us a much more accurate starting place when we're calculating macros versus just rough estimations. So it is a valuable number, and InBody gives us a much more accurate basal metabolic rate versus just using a calculator based on height and weight. So yeah, this is a much more accurate deal. So yeah, that is the InBody test. All right, as your interpretations, if you will, of the InBody tests. So next thing I want to go over is I got a sheet. I'm going to pull in here. Let's resize it a little bit so we can see it. So here's InBody is one of the gold standard tests for measuring body composition. Okay, it's one of the gold standards, but it's not perfect. All right, DEXA scan would probably be the most accurate test for body composition, but they're really expensive machines, so gyms like us don't often have them. Some do, but they're very expensive. They're a little more cumbersome to do. You can't just walk in, get it done in a couple minutes like you can in InBody, so it's not as readily available, if you will. Even if we had one here at the gym, it would require much more. You'd need to make an appointment. Somebody would have to administer you through the DEXA scan and so forth. So in Reno, like Great Basin Imaging does them, and I think they're like $150 now. But that's going to be the gold standard for accuracy of body composition. Next under that, I would put the InBody machines. Okay, and there's a couple other ones out there, bod pods and various things like that, that do a great job with accuracy of body composition. But for our terms, ease of use, very accessible, okay, semi-budget friendly. I mean, they're $6,000-$7,000 machines still. So it was an investment to put one of these at each gym. But there's things that can throw it off that we need to be aware of, all right? And there is a margin of error. So your InBody test can deviate from day to day by 2%, by up to 2%, especially compared to a DEXA scan. So I want to go over the summary of impacts and how they affect the InBody scan. So if you are dehydrated, all right, you're dehydrated, you're not at dehydration, this is going to overestimate your body fat by up to 5%. Okay? And is going to underestimate your lean mass by up to 2.2 pounds. All right? How to fix this? Make sure you hydrate. And this is suggesting 30 to 35 millimeters per kilogram. I basically take ideal body weight times 0.7 as a starting place for hydration, but if you want to sit down and know your exact hydration numbers as a starting place, just get with your coach or me and we can help you with that. But I want to reiterate this. Dehydration will overestimate body fat. So if you're dehydrated, it's going to tell you you're fatter and you have less muscle. So if we pull this up real quick here, again, what was interesting, this is my test. Where is it? Let's get that other one. Let's get that other one. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Downloads. Here we go. So, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry guys, a little bit clunky here. So, if you look at this one, this is interesting. So you look at this hydration level of 0.37, which is kind of their overall range out of 6 of these 7 tests. This one picked up hydration being lower and body fat being higher by 3%, right? Hydration was lower, body fat was higher. Now this also, from test to test, I'm not going to necessarily blame this totally on hydration, but from January 2024 to the September of 2024, I mean, there's enough time frame there for body fat to actually change. So what I'm getting at is if you see a low, like it's showing you're a little bit dehydrated and you did a test 2 weeks ago, chances of you actually changing 3% body fat either direction in 2 weeks is not realistic. It's pretty much impossible. So regardless of how much garbage you're eating. So this is just something to keep in mind if you're testing frequently. You would take a look and make sure that your hydration numbers are pretty consistent. And if you're having a wackadoodle deal here, and what's cool about this is this person's been testing a little more consistently and they're trending down in body fat with hydration staying, relatively the same here. So these are crisp tests. I would say these are very accurate. But say you have one that's off and you're like, wait, how did I gain 3% body fat in 2 weeks? It could be a hydration issue because it can throw it off that much. All right, so dehydration overestimates body fat. Overhydration. All right, overhydration is going to underestimate body fat. So if you want to cheat this thing to feel good one day, just dehydrate the hell out of yourself. That's not healthy. Don't do that. All right, but if you are overhydrated, did I say dehydrate yourself? No, overhydrate yourself, but that can cause heart disease, kill you. So don't do it. You just want to hydrate right. Okay? So if you're overhydrated, it can estimate you being less body fat and more muscle. Okay? Recent food or drink. All right? So if you did this and you just ate a big meal, it can underestimate body fat, overestimate lean body mass. It's going to pick up that food as muscle, and it's going to underestimate. So if you just had lunch and you came in and did this right away, especially if there's a bunch of sodium in it, it's going to throw it off. Okay, so the best way to do this is fasted at minimum 2 to 3 hours before doing InBody. Recent exercise. This can throw it either way. All right, I've seen it. I've played with it. Before and after workouts, it can throw it either way, plus or minus 1 to 5% on your body fat. So don't do this right after working out. It's a waste of your time, right? It's a waste of your time, and it's an inaccurate test one way or the other. So not testing at the same time, right? So if you tested once in the morning, fasted, then you did one, 2 weeks later, you did a test in the evening and it was a, pretty big deviation, plus or minus. Don't get too excited about that second test. You want to test under the same circumstances every single time, okay? Same situation, same circumstances, because that can be very different from a morning weigh versus an afternoon weigh. I can fluctuate up to 3+ pounds in a day, okay? So, making sure you're testing at the same time. Menstrual cycle. I've seen this one. Okay. If you're testing your InBody during your menstrual cycle, it's going to underestimate your body fat and overestimate your muscle. The best time for the ladies to test is during the follicular phase of your cycle. It's going to be the most accurate. And I will suggest, because let's just be honest, men take this stuff seriously, but women really take this stuff seriously, right? A little bit of change here, and if it's not the way you want it to go, we gotta have those counseling sessions, and we gotta calm down. So, knowing this, knowing that water retention, hormone fluctuations and stuff are a big deal, this can send it sideways. Make sure that I would suggest testing monthly during the same time of your cycle. And InBody suggests that you do it during the follicular phase of your cycle. All right. Various medical conditions, like diabetes, any sort of heart failure going on, causing you to retain water can throw this thing off 5 to 10%. And this comes down to mass water retention issues can really send this thing sideways. All right, which is going to also send that extracellular water sideways, that ratio, which is probably going to suggest you seek medical attention. All right, so you want to make sure that you input the proper gender. I've seen people accidentally check female when they're male, and this will throw it off. Right, so just make sure you put the proper age and gender when you're doing your InBody test. Right. It matters when getting an accurate test. Now, it doesn't throw it off a ton because bioelectrical impedance is still going to be just running against, fluid, muscle, and organ and fat in your body, regardless of gender, but it's something to still be leery of. And I was reading, if you're really young, so if you're like a child under 10 years old, this isn't going to be a very accurate test. And if you're if you're elderly, like over 80 years old, this might not be the most accurate test for you. But again, it's a small percentage. I mean, it's not something we're too concerned about. Just make sure you're selecting the proper, your proper gender and age. Extreme composition. So if you are very, very underweight or very overweight, it can misread what's going on in your body. So if you're super, super skinny or very, very obese, on either side of those, I'm talking very, right? The extremes, this is going to be not the most accurate test for you. And if I had to guess, it's probably, I think the InBody can go up to 550 pounds. So that's probably the limit on getting some kind of accuracy. And yeah, I mean, I guess if you're just bag of bones, skinny for hopefully not some sort of health condition, but it could don't need to go further. It's going to be off if you're on extreme ends of body composition. So general rules to minimize errors. I got here, preparation before tests. So we want to maintain consistent testing conditions, right? Try to do your test at the same time every single time, right? So if you work out in the morning, do it before your workout in the morning, after you empty your bowels and bladder in a perfect world, okay? If you work out in midday, just make sure you didn't eat 2 to 3 hours or drink anything 2 to 3 hours prior to your test, all right? And do it before your workout. So you can do this test any time of day, but that 2 to 3 hours of fasting, the perfect is an overnight fast, first thing in the morning, but you're going to get pretty close. I've done this before where I've done it in the morning, then I take the test in the afternoon, and it was pretty damn close. All right, it's pretty damn close. You want to make sure your hydration is consistent. So the day before, make sure that you're hydrated well, and it's just consistent, okay, that you don't feel dehydrated, right? I've already said that. Avoid food or exercise at least 3 hours prior. Avoid eating or drinking water 3 hours prior to testing, all right? Avoid strenuous exercise at least 3 hours before the test, all right? Clothing and accessories, wear lightweight, loose clothing, okay? Nothing heavy, right? Just basically t-shirt, shorts, whatever, something lightweight. InBody does give you, I believe, 1 pound for clothing, all right? Remove all metal things that are touching your body. All jewelry, watches, things in your pocket. You don't want any metal on your body when you're doing InBody tests because it's going to affect those electrical currents. The bioelectrical impedance is going to be affected. So if you got watch, whoop, whoop, ring, jewelry on, earrings, blah, you don't want any metal on your body. All right, skin. You want to use the wipes, and I'm going to reiterate this. You do want to make sure there's moisture on your hands and feet for this. Okay, you want to use the moisture, wipe your hands and feet. You don't want any lotion, oils, or any sweat or anything on your skin, dirt. You want it hands and feet clean, but you need moisture. Okay, I've done this. I've gotten on there with everything dry, and it is different than when, and it's not different. For me, it's been different in a bad way. All right, shows I'm fatter, less muscle. So you want to make sure you use the InBody wipes and you moisten your hands and feet, and they're clean. All right, that's a big deal. I am going to get a basket with the little wipes in them, but we have a bunch. So if you can't find them, just ask your coach. Individuals with pacemakers, electronic medical devices, should not take this test without your doctor's approval. I don't know which devices can and can't. Obviously, pacemakers. I know some people have other electronic devices implanted for various other health things. So if you have something electric implanted in your body, I would not do an InBody test. Okay, that's without your doctor's approval. If your doctor says you're cool, you're cool. But I'm going to say no without that. That's it, you guys. So that's kind of the overview of InBody test sheet, things that throw it sideways, and how to prepare for the test properly. Other things to consider. I personally think that doing an InBody test once a quarter is a good thing for us to maintain our long-term health and keep tabs and track of our composition and health over time. Holds us accountable, right? It's like if you go a year, it's easy to let 5-10 pounds of fat accumulate and you not really recognize it, right? It's a slow process. It's not an overnight process. If we're doing InBody tests more regularly, minimum once a quarter, roughly, it's going to help us stay accountable. All right. InBody suggests doing it every 2 weeks and not doing it more often than every 2 weeks. Rate of change every 2 weeks. But if you're doing it every 2 weeks, you need to be very understanding of the 2% potential margin of error. And you need to very much pay attention to trends. Okay. Look at trends versus individual tests. Right? Because one test could be a little sideways if you're a little dehydrated or things weren't perfect. 2 weeks, though, if you're following a strict plan for making change, you can see trends and change over 2 week periods. I wouldn't do it more often than every 2 weeks. Once a month I think is great. Once a quarter I think is the bare minimum that you should do for accountability. And then if you're doing it once a year, and I think you need to do it more than once a year. It's that simple. So once a quarter is the minimum. Again, if you're following a program or really in a aggressive, making some aggressive changes, you can track the progress of those changes you're making every 2 weeks. That could be good if we're going into a pretty significant calorie deficit and we want to make sure that we are keeping muscle mass, reasonable, and the diet's working. All right. So, but I do like monthly, and absolutely once a quarter should be the minimum. Again, don't take one test as the almighty, right? Look at trends. If your trends are good, you're good. All right. If your trend is bad, if your trend's going in the wrong direction than you want it to, then that's, where you sit down with somebody, like one of your coaches, and we figure out why that's going sideways. All right, a little accountability session there. All right, so don't get all fired up if it's a couple percent bad test. Could be, but chances are if you're testing every 2 weeks and it's off by 2%, don't get too excited about that test one way or the other. You want to see a trend over a month, over a quarter, for both body fat loss and muscle growth. right? Because as I said, as I showed you guys up here, there's a couple things that can throw this off by quite a bit. So same testing circumstances each time. Follow the testing protocol, okay, the preparation, and do that every time for testing. All right. If you guys got questions on this, feel free, hit me up. Happy to help. And yeah, that's all I got for us. I wanted to go over this, give you guys some insights on the InBody machine. All right. I love you guys, and peace.